I have one personal question and then one very broad question. A personal question is, I have very limited eyesight. I get around pretty well, but anyway, it's something that I don't put my attention on. But what happens is, because I do get around a lot, I appear clumsy, bump into people, knock things over. Sometimes if I'm looking at something with another, and they say, "You see that?" and I can't see it. So I end up, because I'm uncomfortable that I did something that appears clumsy, or I bump into somebody, I wind up saying things like, "I'm sorry, I don't see very well," or "My eyes are bad, excuse me," or something like that. And it relieves the social anxiety, but then I'm uncomfortable that I'm saying those words, because if it weren't for that situation, I wouldn't be putting my attention on it. And I just wonder if you had a suggestion as to how I could deal with that.
Well, the most significant thing that this example demonstrates is that you are still, like most everybody else you know, you care more about what they think about you than you do about how you feel. That's that social anxiety that you talk about. We'll give you several things that you can say and do and think about this. But before we do, we want to sort of build a basis of understanding for everyone that you are much more vibrational interpreters than you give yourself credit for. And of course, you're interpreting vibration with your eyes, and of course seeing is important. But there are many more ways to interpret vibration. In other words, have you ever moved around deftly in the dark? Sometimes you do. In other words, Esther, sometimes when she's driving, a driver will do something that was totally illogical and not something that she could see them about to do, but she knew they were about to do it. You hear often people comment that in the losing of one of their senses, their other senses become more heightened. And we think that it wouldn't be a bad idea if all of you could lose all of your senses except your sense of emotion for a while, just to give you an opportunity to heighten it a little bit. In other words, it's a wonderful opportunity to, rather than saying I don't see very well, but I often know things that I can't even see. There are all kinds of things that all of you don't bump into with your cars or with your bodies that you have not seen, that you intuitively knew were there. Jerry and Esther had a herd of chickens when they first moved to Texas, and they were very attached to them, and the skunks were bothering them. And so Jerry rigged an ingenious way of capturing the skunks. It was a very tricky business, and they bought a little truck that they called Skunk Busters that they hauled the skunks away in, because they didn't want the skunks in anything that mattered to them. And then the truck was embarrassing to them, and so they had it refurbished, and now it is a beautiful 1966 Ford truck that looks like it just came off the showroom floor, but it was refurbished. And this beautiful truck became something that they enjoyed riding in often, and whenever they did, it got a lot of attention because they were enjoying it so much. And one night they were driving, and Esther said, "There's something in the road." Now, she hadn't seen something in the road. She heard us say, "There's something in the road." And at the same moment, Jerry said to Esther, they were talking over the top of each other, "I don't feel that I can see clearly." And in that moment, they hit a truck tire that had come off that was in the road and broke an axle on their truck. And all was well. There was no damage done. But it was interesting to both of them that in the darkness, they both had knowing that there was something that was there. And if we were standing in your physical shoes, we would take advantage of diffused vision, and we would amplify the other senses that it encourages you to foster. And it is our promise to you that you will find yourself with a gift of sight far more than your eyes can provide. And you have the best of all worlds, because you can see. In other words, you don't see as well as you would like to, but you do have the ability to see. And as you begin to improve your feeling of appreciation at the other-sightedness you have in terms of interpreting vibration. It is our expectation that your visual interpretation will begin to improve as well. You recognize that by amplifying that you don't see well, you're just holding yourself there longer. But we think there's a bigger story. We think that you care too much what people think about you. And we think that that's more what this is about than anything.
I fully understand about the enhancing of the other senses. Definitely recognize that going on. It's just that, today in the hall, I'm sure other people bumped into each other, but I bumped into more. And, it gets to the point where I feel like I have to say something, and, usually it's an upstream statement.
Well, let's take it and make it a downstream statement. So, first of all, were these all stationary people that you just rammed into, or were they in motion also?
Often it's me not seeing somebody that may be just standing there, or a table even, or,
Do you apologize to the tables as well?
No.
So you're reaching for a downstream statement that doesn't amplify what's gone wrong. And so, are there any advantages into bumping into people?
Not usually.
Could there be any advantage to bumping into someone? You're talking to them. You're talking to them now, and you probably wouldn't have otherwise.
Right.
Have you ever bumped into anyone and you were glad you bumped into them? We hear it all the time. Glad I bumped into you. You must not mean it. You don't really mean that, do you?
It's a situation where, I guess, if you bump into somebody and you think it's your fault, or, I've had situations where I'm walking through a restaurant and there'll be people sit at a table, and I'll bump into their table and they'll think I'm drunk or something, and I always find myself having to explain myself.
Well, there's something at the basis of this that we want to point out to you, and that is what's stuck in your vibrational craw that is at the heart of this physical condition is a belief within you that you can't see as clearly as others can see. So there's a sort of inferiority thing that's going on here. In other words, it's really evident in the words that you are offering as you are feeling that you need to apologize because it appears that your social graces are not what they should be. And we're wanting to say that there was a vibration before this manifestation that goes something like, I don't see the world as clearly as others do. And it's a really common thing, especially when you're little. Almost all of you believe that everybody else is smarter than you are, or at least that's the way many of you come round to thinking pretty early on. You begin to feel inferior as you try to take on what the whole world knows in comparison with what you know. And the fact that you keep bringing up the social graces and their perspective of you, what it's saying really loudly and clearly is, and we said it to you earlier, you care far too much about what others think of you and not enough about what you think or how you feel. That's the thing that you're working on. And when that comes into alignment, you'll find yourself probably still stumbling and bumbling around a little bit, but you won't take it so seriously. What makes you feel uncomfortable? Do you believe that you owe it to all of the world not to have any sort of deficiency? Do you apologize to the ones that you're not dressed the way they would like you to dress? Do you apologize to the people who have different vocabularies or different sounds in their accents? Do you apologize for all of your differences, or is that the only one you're currently apologizing for?
Oddly, or maybe not so oddly, when speaking with someone that English is not their first language, and they might be, struggling a little with their English, it makes me very uncomfortable for them, I guess. Just because I want to do my best to, I don't know, I guess I'm really trying to make the other person feel good.
Well, we think that this is a byproduct of all of you trying to socialize, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier, that there's this thing about wanting to feel good, and so thinking that all of the conditions should be modified in a way that when I now look at the modified conditions, I can then feel good. And we want you to understand that that's the impossible way of going about it. That you, even if you were able to see, you would probably find yourself doing things that others would not approve of, and you would find another excuse to begin apologizing for yourself. And we're just saying, if we were standing in your physical shoes, that we'd stop the apologies. And that's why we think that there's plenty of times that you bump into people that it's not your fault, but you always assume that it is. You always assume that you're the odd man out, that you're the one that's doing the inappropriate thing, or most always. And that's the reason that you're sitting in this chair, and that's the thing that you want to sort of ferret out. We want you to begin referring to yourself as a sensing being, not a seeing being. And when you think about it, when you think about the source that is within you, who has broad view of everything that you are about, and knows where you are in relationship to everything, and is calling you toward all things, we want to say to you that you could have no sight at all and you could still do just fine, because you have the ability to see through those broader eyes. Do you dream at night?
Oh, yeah.
Do you see clearly in your dreams?
Yes.
And so you are able to translate that thought vibration into clear vision under those conditions. And you can do it as well in these when you stop beating the drum of what you can't see.
Okay.
You are as clear and as sighted and as knowing and as wise as you are aligned, or not. So don't argue for your limitations, and don't pretend that they aren't, and don't apologize for your limitations, and stop calling them limitations. Just be who you are, make peace with who you are, line up with who you really are, and find out how much you know and how much you can see.
Thanks. On a much larger scale, I've became aware of you about 6 months ago, and devoured everything I could get my hands on, most of your material, printed and otherwise. And from my understanding, we are of the same source and nature as you, Abraham.
Everyone who is physically focused is an extension of source energy.
Okay. And when we croak, we are going to be on the same wavelength, for lack of a better word, with, say, the Abraham family.
Don't have to croak to do it, but yes, when you croak, you will, because you'll
Okay.
leave behind all doubt and fear and all that stuff that you're beating the drum of, and your vibration will be clear and you'll be right in alignment. That's accurate.
At that point, is there any greater intelligence than us?
Greater in the sense that there is always more to focus upon, but not greater in the sense that anyone who is currently focusing upon anything is greater than that which you are. Infinite intelligence means you have access to all that you are able to ask on any subject. There is not a hierarchy of those who know more. You see, you have to leave behind the idea that you're a storage cabinet accumulating knowledge, and begin to understand that you're a transmitting and receiving mechanism who has access to anything that you focus upon. And the longer you focus upon it purely without contradiction, then the more expanded that becomes. So we would have to say, in the way that you are asking the question, no, there are not those more evolved, expanded, or of higher intelligence than that which you are.
Okay.
And we would also like to say to you, only a human in an attitude of not enoughness would ever ask the question. We don't compare what we know with what anyone else knows, because we all know anybody could know anything that we know. All we have to do is care about knowing it and focus upon it, and we know it. So it's not an issue. There's no shortage. There's no competition. There's no somebody knows more than the other, because everyone has access to infinite knowing. The question is, are you interested in this subject? And everybody's not interested in every subject, but it doesn't make them less than. It just makes them not interested in every subject.
You know, to cut to the chase, are we God?
You are.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And you are adding in every moment of your experience to that which you call God. In other words, every time you move through data and know what you don't want and ask for more, that which man calls God expands to that expanded awareness. That's why it's so powerful. We don't use the word God because man has already decided what God is, and what man has decided, God isn't.